Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go ahead and start the meeting. Scott has some IT problems with his computer. They'll be fixing it here in a minute, but welcome you to the pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, July the 2nd, 2019. Madam Clerk, all the commissioners here, along with the deputy county managers and the county manager himself and the county attorney. If you would, if you got phones or anything like that, please set those to vibrate or silence them. I see Jason digging for his. This time, we want to take a minute or two and ask our General Services Manager if he would come up and introduce our new General Services Associate Engineer. Where did y'all go to?
Chairman Carswell, I asked the General Services Director to check the HVAC.
Okay, so he's checking HVAC, so we can't introduce Brian at this time.
A little more important.
So we'll do that in just a moment, okay? All right, this time, gentlemen, you've had the agenda in front of you. There will be two changes to the agenda. Community Development, Peter has asked for number 1 and number 2 on the scheduled public hearings. He is not prepared today to move forward with that and asked we move that to the August meeting. So that would be the only changes in the agenda is move scheduled public hearings number 1 and number 2. That's 2019-05 and 2019-06. With that in mind, we will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor signify by raising the right hands. Madam Clerk, that will be 5-0. Thank you so much. So at this time, we'll move forward to our first presentation of the day, which will be from Emergency Management Services. Burke County EMS was awarded the American Heart Association's Mission Lifeline Gold Plus Award for the second year in a row, and that's going to be presented by Major Jason Black. Jason, come on up and tell us about the good news.
So we are lucky. Second year in a row we were awarded the American Heart Association's Gold Plus Award. It's rather prestigious. It really is a testament to the EMS, people out there on the road. And it also starts from first responders, well, the 911 center, first responders, the EMS crew, even the cath lab at Fry. So we're happy to have that. We'd like to present that at the next meeting. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, how many people do you plan on bringing with you to present this award to?
Not many, probably 3 or 4.
Okay, 3 or 4, okay. Gentlemen, questions or comments for Brian?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say it's a great honor for
Jason.
EMS and a great honor for Burke County. And I just wanted to take note that I don't know how many in the last 2 or 3 days across the country EMSs have been called to duty, and just so many of them. But anyhow, we'd just like to say to you and your group, congratulations, and you certainly have honored Burke County. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Now that I've changed Jason to Brian.
I get that a lot.
Get that a lot, okay. Anything else? All right, without objection, this will remain on our consent item agenda, and we'll see you at the regular meeting with your other folks, and we're very proud of you for that.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay? Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to our scheduled public hearings. Remember that one and two have been moved. Let's go to number 3 is a zoning map amendment ZMA 2019-07 presented by Pete Minner with Planning and Zoning. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board and distinguished other folks here. This is a citizen-initiated zoning map request, and this is brought forward by Land Daily LLC. They propose to rezone a 1.55 acre portion of 130.47 acre parcel. The request is to rezone from the current low-density conservation district to the residential 1 zoning district. The parcel is also located in the Lake Overlay District. That would not change. So the request is to go from low-density conservation to R1. If we have a map That's the current land use map there. As you see, it's, the zoning is business, general business, commercial, but the zoning is low-density conservation. This is the aerial view of the parcel. As you're probably familiar with this being the Lake James Family Campground. There's probably 200 RV sites there, and they also have a marina as well. Down towards the southern point of that area is the 1.55 acre portion that they would like to rezone to the R1 zoning district. This is the future land use map, just went through there, so it just indicates it's in the Lake James planning area. Then we move to the current zoning and on to a more specific showing of rendering of the area that would be requested for rezoning as outlined in red. So this is all one parcel. It's 30.5 acres, but they would like to rezone that small southern portion to residential 1. The subdivision that adjoins it there is zoned residential 1 currently, and so this would be compatible with the R1 zoning there. And according to the applicant, his thought is building a house on that property. There was some other maps provided in the staff report, probably too many, but what I was trying to show there was he will have some challenges as he tries to develop that property as a residential lot, but that's separate from a rezoning request if it's compatible with the surrounding area and the comprehensive plan doesn't reflect otherwise. That's something that can be considered. It would be up to him to meet those challenges if it was rezoned residential and build a home on that property. So some of these photos or maps here are showing lake setbacks, showing the road setbacks, showing the 100-foot separation from that red line to the north is basically following where the campers are currently located, and there will be a sort of a 100-foot space or buffer maintained there between the campground and the residential district. So that small area where the pointer is there is what he would have as an area to build home in. But again, that would be his challenge to face. So the rezoning request is to rezone that small 1.55 acre portion to residential 1. Staff, doesn't have an objection to that based on the fact that it would be compatible with the existing zoning adjoining it. And it's in the lake overlay. Residential is allowed in the lake overlay. So staff does not have an objection to that proposed rezoning. That sort of concludes my report.
Questions or comments for Peter on this rezoning request?
Mr. Chairman, Peter, I noticed there was a little bit of opposition on this. I personally look at this and I'm like, R1 is still restrictive and is compatible to where seems like the opposition is coming from is R1. And so they gave reasons for opposition, the protection of wildlife, environment, water quality of the lake. I'm just a little confused on how that would
Yeah.
What were
well-
the reasonings for those concerns, is I guess what I'm asking.
Right. We actually got about 12 phoned-in calls, asking things from general questions, what's going on, to concerns that folks had. And some of those same folks attended the planning board meeting and voiced those concerns. So they basically, the ones that had the concerns don't trust that the applicant will do what he says he's going to do by building a home there. They think he's maybe going to do something else. We can only take it at what we're told. The applicant had said his plan is to build a single-family home there. That's all we can kind of go by. But they thought that he might have some ulterior motive and may interfere with that separation that their subdivision has with the campground being in between there. He may try to do something that would be in conflict with the enjoyment of their property. But as you mentioned, the residential 1 district is the most restrictive residential district that we have. So he'd be limited on what he could do with that property, although the zoning ordinance does allow certain limited non-residential uses.
Mr. Chairman, I think, of course, Chris is going to be out of the picture, but I think Chris has shown over the years the way that campground used to be to what it is today, and I think it's, probably fine. I just think that he's made such a nice thing out of that property where it used to be so run down and so dangerous out there, and housing units that weren't supposed to be there and whatever. I think they've just done wonderful out there so far, and will continue to do so.
Yeah, he's put a great deal of investment in that property, several $1 million actually.
They used to have electric lines on the ground, and I mean, it was awful. And then some people just built dwellings out there, which they shouldn't have done. Of course, they've all been torn down, but that whole campground is completely changed over since Chris has had it, probably the last 4 or 5 years.
I agree.
Other questions or comments? Peter, he's going to sell the RV park, and do you know when that might occur?
I do not. I don't know if y'all know Chris, but he's kind of an idea man. He's got a lot of ideas, and we just recently heard about him proposing to sell the park, and then we've heard that there's been a change. He may not be selling it. So right now, currently, I don't know if that's if that deal's going forward or not.
Okay, with that in mind, if he does keep the 1.55 acres, can he meet all of our zoning requirements to actually build a dwelling in that small area, which sits extremely low down to the lake?
What it will have to do, and it would be challenging, yeah, it's got some topography challenges there, and the good thing about it, there is public water there, but he'll have to figure out septic in that little area there. Until he gets soil scientists involved and things of that nature, it's just hard to say. We could not deny him a permit to build, as long as he can meet, like you said, those setbacks and other stated zoning standards that must be met.
Thank you for that, and I agree with Wayne and Scott both. 1.55 acres is not a whole lot of territory to come in and do something really,
Well,
really different, you know?
I think he showed the county and that where his heart is on that property. I mean, I've been, was out there,
Absolutely.
you know, years and years ago, and from what it was then to what it is today, I trust him 100%. I really think probably his goal is probably deep down to probably, he's gonna sell it one of these days. That's his business. He's got parks in Florida or had parks in Florida, and that's sort of his business, I guess.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Pete, would the septic system also have to lie within that building envelope?
It is supposed to lie within the building envelope, yes. Mhm. So, that's, but nowadays, they have a lot of engineering that can go into septic systems. They become pretty costly, but they even allow, and some people have used what's called a drip system. There's some pre-treatment that goes involved, right, initially, and then from there it's released on top of the ground, and it's basically just clean water. It's pretty costly, but it can be done.
Other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Okay, Peter,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. All right, moving to the consent agenda items. Item number 1 is from the Board of Commissioners, designation of the voting delegate for the NCACC Annual Conference. Gentlemen, our conference will be from August the 22nd to the 24th in Guilford County during the business session on Saturday. There will be a voting session. There are several people that have given of themselves to apply for the, or announce for the second vice president slot, to become a member of the executive board, and other items to be voted on. As always, we designate someone as the voting delegate for that conference. I am willing to do that as your chair unless you have another person that you so desire to do that.
That's good.
Mr. Chairman, that's our normal procedure, and if you're not there, it would go to the vice chair, and maybe the next time we do and add anything to our rules, we might just want to make that as a normal procedure,
All
because
right, sir.
I think it just stands as a natural protocol to do that.
Well, I will be there.
Good.
And I appreciate you allowing me to be your voting delegate. So without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Moving on to our next item is the Board of Commissioners resolution supporting the 2020 Census Partnership. Gentlemen, the resolution is in here. I hope you've had time to read that. The U.S. Census Bureau is required by the Constitution to conduct the count that will occur again in 2020. We are committed as the county to ensure every resident is counted. And until there are some things up in the air about the 2020 census, and hopefully those will be, those things in question will be eliminated by that date. But obviously, we, according to the state demographer, I went to that meeting in Hickory not long ago, we're moving up, and probably in this 2020 census, we will gain another U.S. representative to the House. Our population is increasing again all across the state, and this count is important. We have several members of Bryant's staff that are on this committee, so I would hope that we could take this resolution and support the 2020 Census Partnership. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question. I do have a PS or maybe an add-on to that resolution.
Okay.
In the meetings that I've attended on that, and I've attended 2 of them, they're having real difficulty in getting people to volunteer. And I think it'd be nice if we put another whereas on a resolution and say we're willing to include these public service announcements, you know, on our websites and wherever we can to assist in getting people to help with that census.
You want to speak to that since we already have some people on that board?
I think that's, pretty much inferred that we are going to utilize a means available to us, either through public service announcements or things on our Facebook page to try to get this word out. And, you know, we can work with our school system as they touch a lot of people. But, no, I don't see that being an issue. We'll utilize all means available to us to get the word out.
I noticed the paper is already, excuse me, I noticed in the newspaper that they're already promoting and asking for people to sign up and help with the consensus. So I think with the unemployment rate and all, it's part of the reason that they can't find people to work. So good news on one side, bad on the other.
Well, the county manager has designated Lance Riddle as our chairperson of the 2020 committee, and he's already started meetings, putting together a group and asking for those volunteers to come join us to make sure that this does occur and that we have good counting here in Burke County. So, and I appreciate you for that, Brian. Okay? Any other comments? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving to item number 3 is appointment to the Council of Aging, presented by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to appoint Chuck Mosley to the Council on Aging for seat number 11 to complete an unexpired term ending November 30th, 2021.
Any questions for Kay on the appointment of Chuck Mosley to the Council on Aging?
Should be a good choice.
All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving to item number 4 is appointment to the Regional Aging Advisory Committee, presented by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to reappoint Eleanor Summers to seat number 2 and Stephanie Workman to seat number 4 to the Regional Aging Advisory Committee for the remainder of 2-year terms ending June 30th, 2021.
Any questions or comments for Kay regarding Eleanor and Stephanie? Okay, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to our next item is the appointment to the Drexel Planning Board ETJ, presented by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to appoint Scott Dula to the Drexel Planning Board, seat number 2 for the ETJ for the remainder of a 3-year term ending April 30th, 2020, and to reappoint Wayne Whistnett to seat number 3, the ETJ alternate, for a 3-year term ending April 30th, 2022.
All right, gentlemen, any questions for Kay regarding Scott and Wayne's reappointment or appointment? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving to item number 6 is the East Burke Senior Center appointments. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The terms of East Burke Senior Center Advisory Board members Sylvia Lale, Elsie Childers, ended May 31st, 2019. They are not seeking reappointment. Sarah Ann Gibson, who had seat number 8, has trouble attending the meetings, so we're requesting her removal. Applications were received from Virginia Whistnett, Sharon Thornton, and Paula Huffman to fill these seats.
All right, gentlemen, questions for Kay on appointments of Virginia and Sharon and Paula? All right, hearing none, without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to our next item is appointments to the Burke County Smart Start Partnership for Children. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to appoint Julia Terrell as a DSS designee to the Burke County Smart Start, Inc. Partnership for Children Board of Directors to complete the remainder of a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2021. And this was due to Tracy Kincaid's retirement, is how this vacancy arose.
All right, gentlemen, question for Kay on Julia's appointment? All right, hearing none, without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to our next item, number 8, reappointments to the WPRTA. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to reappoint Brian Steen to the Western Piedmont Regional Transit Authority, seat number 2, and Scott Carpenter to seat number 3 as the alternate for 3-year terms ending June 30th, 2022.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard Kay's recommendation for these two fellers. That we may want to put back on that board. Any questions concerning this appointment? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to number 9, community development, approve the purchase of Fonta Flora Trail easements presented by Shane Prisby, our community development operations manager. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Community Development Department has working very hard and for a long time on closing the gap in the Benfield's Landing area of the lake. I think we finally have that. What we are proposing is the purchase of 2 easements on 3 parcels of land. It's about 3 acres total when you consider the area of the easement, and the total cost for the 2 easements to the landowners would be $30,000 coming from the Duke Energy CRA funding for the Over Mountain Victory National Historic Trail, which will share the corridor with the fauna and flora through the section.
All right, questions for Shane on this matter or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Moving on to item number 10 from the county manager is approval of a lease of real estate property at 302D South Center Street in Hildebrand. Mr. County Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I was contacted by a real estate firm that is wanting to put an office there in Hildebrand, and the space that we used when the library senior center was under construction to relocate the library out of the old pool house, and they are agreeable to $1,000 a month rent. They do have a long-term interest in doing that, but they're probably needing to be able to move in by mid-August, and we'll need a little bit of time to go through all the procedures for a longer-term lease if both parties are agreeable. But again, it's $1,000 a month rent plus utilities that we won't have to pay anymore. So I think it is a good thing, and it may stir some other interest and potential renting of other office spaces in that entire building. So I would ask the board for approval.
Questions for Brian on this matter?
As well as cost avoidance for the utilities.
JR, how soon we can get a lease agreement drawn up? End of the week. Within a week.
4th of July.
By the end of the week. Within a week. All right, brother. Thank you so much for that. All right. Any other questions? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 11 from our Human Resources Department is regarding Article 5, Conditions of Employment addition to that policy, presented by Rhonda Lee, our HR Director. Ms. Rhonda?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The request that you have in front of you is to add a policy to our current Burke County personnel policy, and that would be under Article 5, Conditions of Employment, and the new policy would be telecommuting. This policy would provide an option for management to allow selected employees to work from home in certain situations. Allowing selected employees to telecommute could alleviate overcrowding of existing office space with no renovation or office expansion expenses. I can go over the policy if you would like for me to read the policy. Or no? Don't read it. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and take questions at this time. So.
Questions for Rhonda then. Maynard, you want to start?
Several. I kind of chuckled when I read this. If you remember from a couple of years back at one of the county commissioners association's meeting in North Carolina, I attended, and I said the future, and it told us, if you recall, that I believe it was 45% of the things that we do now will be done by robots by year 2030, and that many people would be earning a living at home, and some people would be earning a living at their favorite vacation spot because technology has made that possible. So I endorse us looking at that, except I do have a couple of comments, and I read where that they'll be reimbursed for some expenses and for business-related expense. But will there be other add-ons such as meals or travel, or since from my understanding, they will not be traveling as much. They won't be traveling to the office. They'll be staying at home. And one of the big concerns I have, Rhonda, falls under the how we going to track and the work performance. And because, as you well know, some people do not work well, not supervised. I know they have to be managed. They have to be encouraged. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just personalities and characters, and you have to be well with that. And some won't do well unmanaged. I like the trial basis for 3 months. It gives you a chance to see if it works or not before you really get glued in. But those are just some of the concerns I think we need. I know there needs to be a system, a check system of how you monitor, and, you know, somebody who doesn't do as well performing at home as they do managed needs to be brought back into the office. And those that do
Exactly.
well probably will perform more, do more, if they work well without supervision.
That's true. And that's.
I know that was a lot in a nutshell, but I had it all together, so.
Yeah. And that's part of the policy as it's lined out. There will only be certain positions that qualify for this. The folks that are meeting face-to-face with citizens, those folks wouldn't even be considered for this type of work. And also, there's a lot of stuff in the policy that talks about the employee has to be with us a year. They have to have worked with Burke County for a year. They also have to show that they are high performers before they're even considered to work from home. And that's why the trial period is in there, just to see, you know, once we get them out there and, you know, see how their metrics, their performance is going. The key to this is the communication piece between the supervisor and the employee. That communication piece has to be there between those two entities. And I think the county manager.
Yes, the positions, what we're talking about, are positions that are primarily data entry. It doesn't matter whether they're sitting at home or in an office.
Yeah.
This, to me, is a means of motivation. If you want to get to go home and do things from home and dress in your bunny slippers and your flannel shirt and get the job done, then you better perform. You don't perform, you're coming back to the office. It helps us also with cost avoidance and having to build or rent new office space. And with the means that DSS has, that I'm thinking of in particular, they will track. And if you hadn't gotten your cases done by a certain minimum number, there will be consequences. And again, I think it acts to motivate people to if you want to do this, then you have to show that you can, not only to get there, but to stay there. Little story I'll share with you. When I went to the State Highway Patrol, the first morning that we were there, they told us that your politician may have got you here, but he won't keep you here. Again, you either perform or you'll be out of this program. And Steve, I don't know if there's anything that you can expand on the means of tracking and making sure that they are meeting the number of cases and things that they're supposed to input.
Yeah, we have log files and histories that we can verify, you know, what time an employee worked, when he was logged in, when they were logged in or out of the system. So we can work to provide supplemental information for that supervisor to help in motivating and tracking performance and those indicators.
Well, like I say, I look forward to the experiment with it and I hope it works, but I will promise you, I'll bet you $1,000 to $1, and I'm not a bettor, that you will have one on occasion, that will not work and will falsify information, et cetera, et cetera. And you just have to have a system that allows you to deal with that, and that's what I'm talking about, that I had to fire 2 people through my lifetime. One of them turned in that he called on a bunch of advertisers to sell advertising to. And an advertiser I went to said he was out on the golf field playing golf. And when I checked the people he had on his list that he visited to pitch advertising to, he wasn't there. So obviously he didn't work for the company anymore. But I'm just saying there needs to be some kind of check system that you can validate that what they're doing is right, what they're doing is what they said they did, et cetera, et cetera. And monitor it so you know how successful you are with it.
And that's what Steve was alluding to.
Yes.
That is there and it will be observed.
Other questions or comments? All right. Hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Okay. Moving on to item number 12, again, is Human Resources, proposed amendment to Article 8, Section 8.02, Resignation Personnel Policy, presented by Rhonda Lee, our HR Director. Ms. Rhonda?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. The reason for this policy, I guess, change is that it's really under the resignation in good standing. And for a long, long time, our policy has been that for all employees, it's a 2-week notice. And that puts the county in a bind sometimes when that's a department head that's leaving. So we're recommending that for a department head level, that those folks give a minimum of 4 weeks notice instead of 2 weeks notice, just so the county can respond appropriately in those cases.
All right, questions for Rhonda on this amendment to the employment policy?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question of one. I think it's an excellent idea. I do have a question, though. And I'd like for the attorney to do a little research on that. According to our own rules, no rules have been broken, but the timing of this is probably not the best in the world. We'll probably need to wait a month or so. So I'm just saying you need to look at that to see if something could come back to bite us. That's all.
Other questions or comments?
Rhonda, any issue with treating one group of employees different from another?
Not for department heads that I'm aware of for that.
Other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 13 from the Tax Department. Item number 14 from the Tax Department will be our tax collection report for June and our release refund report for June. Danny?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Tax collection report. Current year taxes, this includes motor vehicle and property taxes. We're in the year at about 101% collected, which is good. The delinquent collections were at 83.87%, a little bit under. This year, I think we'll make that goal this coming year. Late list penalties at 102.76%.
All right, questions for Danny on the tax collection report? All right, Danny, let's move on to the release refund.
Okay. Tax releases, we had a report amount of $2,316.44. We had $471.78 rebilled, which gives us a net release of $1,844.66. We had refunds in the amount of $1,084.39. Vehicle tax refunds were $343.34.
All right, questions on the release refund report?
Mr. Chairman, no question on that report, but if it would be in order, Danny, could you give us any update as to how the new tax attorney firm is working? If that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, just.
Go right ahead.
I do not have that information in front of me. I think we've been pretty successful so far, but I will forward on to the county manager to forward to you our status through the end of this month. It may be a couple of days before I get that updated report.
Any just general?
I think we've had some pretty good success. We've had, we turned over 250 cases. He has sent out, or the firm has sent out demand letters on all those cases. Several of them have paid based on the demand letter. Then we've had some that have gone, into the suit level and paid it at that point in time also. So there's all different levels. They do have some that are on payment plans. To do the payment plan with them, there is a fee for doing that the taxpayer incurs. That, it's like before and like in the past, it's really no out-of-pocket money to the county, which is a good thing. Those that end up delinquent are the ones that pay the bill. Right. We're still pursuing the stuff down at the Pine Mountain Lakes, Mr. Hallwell stuff. That's quite an undertaking, so I figure it'll be another month or two before we'll have any real report there. I think the last report, I passed that on to the commissioners, to Mr. Carswell and to Brian. I would like, if I could add one little anecdote here, tax bills. Tax bills are on the system right now. They should be on the web tomorrow. I anticipate them going out around the 8th or 9th, being mailed. So we'll see a huge spur in tax payments coming in July like we always do.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Danny? All right, hearing none, without objection, items number 13 and 14 will stay on the consent item agenda. And thank you, Danny, for the updates.
Thank you.
All right, moving to section number 6 is items for decision. Our first item is the appointments or reappointments to the Animal Advisory Board presented by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The terms of appointment for Dr. Linda Schakowsky, seat number 2, the veterinarian, Donald Probst, seat number 4 at large, pet owner, and Lori Rice, seat number 6, rescue or foster agency, end July 30th. All 3 members are seeking reappointment and have provided the required documentations. And we've got several other citizens who have applied for these seats. And so for the veterinarian seat number 2, that would be Dr. Linda Schakowsky, to reappoint her for a 2-year term ending July 31st, 2021. For seat number 4, you have Donald Probst, Debbie Hawkins, or Gwen Stevens up for consideration for that seat, and all have provided their documentation. And for seat number
6.
You have Lori Rice, Carla Wallace, Gwen Stevens, and Megan Bradley to choose from. And it would also be for a 2-year term ending July 31st, 2021. And all of those folks have provided their documentation.
All right, thank you, Kay. Questions for Kay on this decision item for appointments?
Mr. Chairman, not a question. Maybe now's a good time to expand your advisory board.
Well, I can further report that the Animal Advisory Board met, I think, on the 26th. And seat number 7 that's been vacant, which was the at-large non-pet owner seat, since no one has applied for that seat in the last couple of years, I asked that board to take a look at that, and they voted to recommend that we just make that an at-large seat so they can get that 7th member, and hopefully that will be coming to you at your August meeting.
thank you, Kay, for the hard work that you and Vance have done on this. It's unusual that we have actually 3 nominees for the 1 seat on each of those 2 seats. So we're gonna have to do our homework on that one, gentlemen, to decide which one you want to put on those 2 seats. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
to change that 7th seat, JR, we need to look at the ordinance and see if it's in the ordinance that they are,
It is in the ordinance.
all right, so we'll need to amend the ordinance.
That'll be part of it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the items for decision. Moving on to item number 2 is General Services, is our bid award for Eckerd Creek Pump Station Rehab Project, presented by Miles Champion and Benji. So, Miles, you're on the floor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Benji here will present the information on the bids. We had a good turnout. We have 3 bids, so we'll go over those for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As Miles said, we were pleased to even get 3 bids. These days, it's not uncommon that you don't get 3 bids the first time, and sometimes you have to re-advertise and open with only 2 bids. So we were pleased to get 3 bids, and the low bidder was Lockland Construction Company of Stony Point in Alexander County, and I've worked with them before. They are qualified, so we certainly recommend awarding to them, but there's several issues the board needs to be aware of. First of all is that their bid was slightly over budget, about $25,000. So their bid was $1,496,000 if you round up just a couple dollars. There was about $1,471,000 budgeted for the construction, which included contingencies, which contingencies, I'm sure you all are aware, is money you want to keep in your budget as you go through the construction project all the way to the end in case unforeseen conditions arise and you have to address those. Typically, we like to recommend 5% of that low bid amount be set aside for contingencies. So that would be approximately $75,000. So all that said, you're either slightly over budget or maybe worst case, $100,000 over budget with this low bid. And so what I checked on behalf of the county was with the funding agency that you're using for this project. It's a combination grant and loan from the Division of Water Infrastructure, part of DEQ. They can offer additional loan funds, not grant funds, unfortunately, but it would be at 0% interest and amortized over 20 years. So it's, as good a financing as you can hope for other than a grant. So they can offer that to you. You would have to request it and wait for them to decide, but they could probably decide within a month. It would not have to go back to the LGC since it would be within 10% of the original loan amount. So, of course, we're here to listen today, the board's pleasure, but just know that if you do award this, number one, it has to be approved. The bid itself has to be approved by the Division of Water Infrastructure, so there would be a resolution that you would pass authorizing the county manager to sign a contract after Water Infrastructure reviews the bid. But then in addition to that, you need to make a decision about this shortfall. So my recommendation, well, let me back up a minute. I did speak with the low bidder. There are a few ideas to value engineer the project, whether it's cutting back the scope a little bit or maybe even get him to reduce his price a little bit. So I gave him some ideas. The president, Mr. Andrew Sherrill, he's supposedly studying on those and will get back to me. If we're lucky, we'll have that information before your board meeting. But if not, with it or without it, I guess what I'm recommending is that you authorize the county manager to proceed if the board's pleasure is to go ahead and apply for these additional loan funds. If not, you probably need to wait and see if we can get it negotiated down within a reasonable amount. I guess the third option would be to pull from either fund balance or utility fund to make up the shortfall. I guess I'll pause there and see if there's some questions.
All right, gentlemen, questions for Benji or Miles on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. You're replacing about 1.5 miles of line
Yes, sir.
with a 12-inch pipe. What's in there now? I thought we had a 12.
It is a 12. Yeah, this is a like for like, they call it.
It's
Same
wh-
size pump, same size force main. So
So why are we replacing a 12-inch line with a 12-inch line? Why are we not going to an 18?
yeah, excellent question. So this, in order to get that grant especially, but even the 0% interest loan, this had to be applied for as a like-for-like project. And the reason, of course, the reason it was originally applied for was that the deterioration of all these facilities. The force main is over 40 years old. The pump station is roughly 30 years old. This was an old force main that went from the Hildebrand area over in here into Eichard. And then later they built a pump station kind of in the middle of this force main in order to serve the exit 116 area of I-40. So they tapped into that older force main and then later they abandoned the rest of that force main. So what you have is probably, I think, cast iron, it might be ductile iron, 12-inch line, and we would be replacing it with a 12-inch PVC line. It's less susceptible to corrosion.
Well, the reason that question is so important to me is that, you know, through the process and over the years, we say we don't have enough room, we don't have enough capacity on that line. So we're putting in a new line, but with no more capacity. Why would we do that?
Good. Yeah, I didn't fully address that part of the question. So this particular pump station and force main serves that exit 116 area of I-40. There's not a capacity issue there. It's already running below 50% of capacity. This is just a reliability, safety type of project. Right now, you've got two pumps. I think one of them's not even working, if I remember right, yeah. Underground in a steel enclosure that's dangerous for people to go down inside of. And likewise with the force main, it's as old as it is, it's likely leaking. So it's more of a reliability project than it is. It's not a capacity increase type project, which fortunately you don't need. We actually had to defend in the engineering report phase keeping a 12-inch line and keeping a 1,000 gallon per minute pump station. The state kind of questioned, if you're not really using 50% or more of the capacity, why do you need to go back with the same size? And we showed how during certain rain events you do get on up there closer to 100%. But
If I may comment too, the force main size is engineered to match the pump size. So you can't just put a larger force main on the same size pump, or you start running into a low velocity issue. So it has to be a matching set. And since that pump station is below 50%, then we've got plenty of capacity.
That certainly makes sense, but my question still would be, Miles, if we need to go to an 18-inch or whatever, do they go up 12, 15, 18?
well, you can get 14-inch, 16-inch. They go in even 2 inches when you get
So
up to that
since
size.
I'm saying this on behalf of Wayne and I, we've been on the board long enough that we've addressed this thing 3 or 4 times, spent a lot of money on it 3 or 4 times. And the last time we were told we'd never spend money again on it. And here we are again with, $1.4 million or so. But anyhow, if it's just a little bit more to go to that next size, why wouldn't we be smart and do that?
Yeah,
Well, if you upsize the line and y'all pay for it, because the loan and grant won't pay for it. The state will not pay for an upsized line. So they're paying for what's going to get replaced. So if you want to put the money into it, then what we have to do is resize the pumps so the pumps will match the line size. And that's an additional cost too that y'all will have to front the bill
So
for.
if we go bigger, it's all our money and none of the state's.
Yes, sir. And then you're in a station that's even much larger than you really need now for that service area. So you're, from now till sometime in the future, 15, 20, 25 years out, you've spent your money, it's just sitting there. It's not gaining you anything.
Yeah, and I'll point out that on other pump stations, the county's invested a lot of money. This particular one, to my knowledge, since the day it was built, It's only been some minor things, some sealing of the wet well, some leaks, put in emergency bypass connection, and since we're down to just one pump instead of two, I don't think the county's invested in replacing the major equipment or infrastructure here.
Mr. Chairman, one more question about capacity. Miles, you can tell I'm not educated on sewage, but my question is, are there stages of pumps? In other words, if you move the waste faster, you'd have more volume. Is there stages of a pump, or can you buy pumps that moves it faster?
In some circumstances, if you have the design criteria figured out ahead of time that this particular pump station has belts and pulleys on it, there are ways that you can speed up a pump slightly without overloading your motor, but that's an engineering calculation you have to make. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't. Sometimes when you begin to run closer to your capacity, then this one is designed for 2 pumps on or just 1 pump on? No, it's 1 pump on.
One pump at a time.
1 pump at a time.
To alternate.
So you can't run 2 pumps at a time on this station, but that one single pump, typically as your capacity, as your need grows, your pump on time is just longer. That's the only difference. So you don't really have to change the equipment to add customers onto your system.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions or comments?
To kind of go to the finance side of it, to Margaret, at $100,000, does it make sense to go for a loan to manage that for 20 years, whatever might have to be dealt with?
No, would be the short answer to that. I think we might want to look at the water sewer fund retained earnings and evaluate what this would mean. But I had a question as well financially. So what about the alternates? Are you saying they'd be within the contingency, or you need those in addition to the contingency?
Right, thank you for bringing that up. I'll review those quickly. You see on your,
It may be more than 100 is the reason, Jeff, we probably need to keep talking.
so if you look at those alternates on your abstract, there's A1, A2, A3, and A4. So A1 is 0. The Gorman-Rupp is a preferred pump manufacturer, and that's actually what their base bid was based on, so there's no increase for that. Item A2 is for a Cummins generator. It's a little higher quality, higher reliability. The base bid was a Generac, meaning that it was up to the contractor to shop around and find the best price they can to meet the spec. Generac meets the spec, but it's not known for reliability, not nearly as much as Cummins. So you have a price there for that increase, and I would recommend the county implement that alternate A2. The A3 alternate is for a particular brand grinder, but in my opinion, compared to the one they submitted on their base bid, which is used to be Chicago Pump, now it's Grundfos, in my opinion, that's just as good quality or close enough. So I would not recommend alternate A3. Then alternate A4 is to go to a different brand, pumps and controls, and actually cost quite a bit more, almost $63,000. And in my opinion, that's not any better quality, so I would not recommend that one. So therefore, my recommendation would be alternate A2 only, which is roughly a $10,000 increase. So if you take the roughly $25,000 that the low bid was above budget, the $10,000 for that alternate, and then at least I'd say 2.5% contingency, that'd be $38,000. Add all those together, that's a $72,000 increase over your budget. So that's what I would recommend you to pull from existing funds or apply for additional loan funds.
And I also agree with and concur with Benji on that after reviewing the alternates and the specs, is to take A1 and A2 and not take A3 and A4.
So just for clarity, are we talking, you said 2.5%, 5% earlier, now you're saying 2.5% on contingent?
Right, so Margaret had made earlier some good suggestions that with the any additional loan money you do access, you are going to pay a 2% fee on that. So 2% of $72,000 would be about, I think, $1,400.
Sure.
So not a huge amount, but obviously you take money, pay that fee, and then if you don't use it, you don't have to pay it back, you just don't use it, but you do lose that fee. So I guess I'm saying 38,000, 2.5%, in my opinion, is a good amount to have access to one way or the other. And obviously, if something really unforeseen happens, then you'll have to go back to the, the loan funds or to some other fund balance. So I don't really anticipate, but of course you never do, but in this particular project, it's, the scope's pretty well defined. There's not any reason to think there'll be a lot of rock excavation, if any, things like that. There's nothing that I'm anticipating that would run the cost up to where you would need a high contingency amount. So I would feel comfortable with 38,000 at 2.5%.
Other questions or comments? So Margaret, what we're saying is we're not recommending going back to the State Water Infrastructure Authority and going for the 0% loan amount, that we feel more comfortable using our own money for that small amount.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions regarding what Margaret has just recommended? Benji, would that be your recommendation also, is to stay away from clean water for the 0%?
I would have an opinion on that.
Okay, no opinion.
Sorry.
Okay. Thought I'd know you.
I'm just giving you options.
Okay. Ma'am.
That would leave you the option, if God forbid we did have a large contingency, then we go back to the loan.
Okay.
I can say
Because we
that,
can access up to 130,000, 131,000.
yeah, up to 10% of your principal forgiveness or non-principal forgiveness amount.
Right.
I believe that's the correct number. I do know from experience that, you know, even in the middle of the project, you could go back and ask for additional loan money. It's not like you have to do it all up front.
Okay, can we frame the, I'm sorry, do you want something else?
I just wanted to ask Miles, does this pipe, this 12-inch pipe, run into the gravity flow? I believe it's on the information. How big is the gravity flow pipe?
Benji will have to answer
Yeah,
that.
I
I'm
think-
sorry.
Good question, yeah. Don't have it in front of me. It's either a 10-inch or 12-inch. So again, everything's staying the
But
same
it
as
won't
far.
make any difference if you increase it there, if you choke it down somewhere else.
That's a good point, yeah. Yeah, that would take further study. If you wanted to increase your capacity 20%, you'd have to look at downstream. Are you able to
That's correct.
also take?
And the other question I had, just for my own information, Mr. Chairman, is, going back to physics, is it true with sewage, the same with water, that the outside 25% of a culvert carries as much water as the inside 3/4?
Not sure I followed the
Well, if,
picture there.
if you have a 3-foot culvert and you go to 4, you doubled your capacity.
Right. Yes, the capacity increases as the square of the radius. That's right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
4 inches would carry twice as much, so, but it won't do any good. We got a stoppage, blockage on the other end.
Well, the one comment about that is, it's a little misnomer, is our pumps are constant flow pumps, so 1,000 gallons a minute all day long, or 1,000 gallons a minute for 2 minutes. So that downstream sewer is only going to see 1,000 gallons a minute. It just depends on how long it sees it. As long as that pump station's been there operating at 1,000 gallons a minute, we haven't had any downstream problems as I know of. So since we're doing a direct replacement, the pumps will run longer as we tie more people on, but it's not necessarily dumping more sewer in that manhole and running into a capacity problem there. So.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Kay, frame the motion. Let's take out about the additional loan funds and get with Margaret about the appropriations that we will need, and frame that motion in that manner for us, if you would, please, ma'am. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the items for the decision. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. Moving on to item number 3 from our IT department is the award of the data center services bid, presented by Steve Bennett, our IT director. Brother Steve?
Good afternoon again. We released in the paper RFB for the equipment needed to start consolidating our data centers. We anticipate on having those bids back and analyzed and ready for you guys to award a contract by the next meeting.
Do you anticipate having those back days before the next meeting so that we can get copies of them to
Yes, sir.
preview? Okay. Can you get those to us quick as you can?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Steve on this matter? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the decision item agenda. Thank you, Steve. Moving again to general services with Miles Champion is purchase of a dozer for the landfill. Miles?
Yes, staff recommends purchasing a John Deere 750K dozer for the replacement of the existing D8 dozer at Johns River Waste Management Facility. The existing dozer is a 1993 and has exceeded its useful life cycle. The staff recommends the John Deere in an amount of $266,443.13 through a third-party cooperative purchasing organization. Due to the amount, the board approval is necessary.
Questions for Miles?
Mr. Chairman, I had one. Miles, did they not want to give you any trade-in value for the D8?
Well, if we decide to surplus that, we'll do that as a separate item. Typically, you won't get very much on a trade-in, not like you could on govdeals.com or auctioning.
So we'll get more money marketed in ourselves, is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
that's what I suspect, yes.
And I did have one question I asked county attorney. Did you find out on that?
Yes, sir. We're not required to get three bids. 3 bids from the same company would not be considered 3 separate bids. But we're not required on the dozer to get 3 bids because of Section 143-129E3. It would be a purchase made through a competitive bidding group purchasing program, which is the state-approved program, and it's called Sourcewell.
So this is through North Carolina
It's
purchase
through, it's through their approved, what would you call it?
Cooperative purchasing.
Cooperative
It's not the
purchase.
state contract program, but it's very similar. The state approves certain cooperative purchasing agreements, and Sourcewell is one of them.
Just wanted to be sure that we weren't breaking the law.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
This is a budgeted item, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it's coming in under budget.
Is that within budget?
Yes, it's within budget and it's below state contract.
And under budget.
And under budget, yes.
Madam Clerk?
Just had a thought, and we mentioned it a little bit, do we want to add the surplus to this so we don't have to bring it back?
Nope. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the decision items agenda. If you will remain there and bring our new employee up, we will now make introductions and hear all the history and background of our.
Sure.
Come on up.
Right, come on up.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce Brian Tart as the new associate engineer. He started yesterday, and fortunately, he came back today, so that's a good sign. He has an extensive construction background.
Let's sit down closer to that
Sure.
mic. I can't
Brian?
hear too
Good,
good
okay,
today.
yeah. Brian has extensive construction background. He has been a street supervisor for the last 7 years at City of Hickory, and he's a great project manager and someone to help me finish projects. So we certainly, I've been looking forward to this for some time now, and we appreciate y'all's patience and help with the new hire. So, Brian?
I'm just glad to be here. I worked with Miles at the city of Hickory when he was there, and we always kind of saw things that we worked on kind of on the same level. So I feel sure that it's going to be the same way here. I got to get my feet wet here. I don't know much about Morganton, or Burke County, but it'll be just fine. We'll work well together, and we'll make things feel at ease for you guys and girls and ladies.
All right, gentlemen, questions for our new employee?
Just one quick question. You know how to fix the air conditioning?
Eric fixed it already. It's on test mode, and it's working fine at this point.
Some of us would disagree.
Yeah, me too.
Eric's on the roof right now, so.
Anyone else? Absolutely. We've been waiting for you for a long time. I'm sure the newspaper will have some questions for you before you leave this afternoon, get a little
Okay.
background information on you, but we do appreciate you for that.
It was good to meet everybody, and I'm glad to be here.
Welcome aboard. All right. Moving on to, is there any other reports that need to come before the board today? Also remember that our county offices will be closed July the 4th in observance of Independence Day here. Anything else that needs to come before the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, we stand adjourned.